leave the people of Greenland, and we do not want to be Americans, and we have been quite clear about that. We do want collaboration and deep partnership and relationship, but I just must ask you, what value do you put on our culture and our right to decide what happens with us in the future?
You can't do anything to defend yourself. Denmark cannot do anything to defend you. It's up to the United States of America. End of story. And to capitalize on that for your people, for your country. The United States can certainly do that, and it's a win-win for the Greenlanders.
And do you want to answer the minister's question, which is what value do you put on what the people of Greenland want?
I love to sit down and watch MAGA bootlicking sycophants get dismantled on live telly, and we've got a cracking one here from a BBC in January. I came across it again today, and I don't believe you all have seen it, so I decided to bring it to you. But before we get into it, I'd love to give a big shout out to Alan Ganner from Victoria, Canada, John Pelosi from North Carolina, James from New Zealand, Wendy from the UK, Kenneth Burridge from Aarhus, and Terry from the south of England. It's people like you who make what we do here possible. Right, so, Greenland. You heard me, Greenland. The place Trump has been obsessing over like it's some kind of real estate deal gone wrong. We're talking annexation attempts, tariffs slapped on European allies, NATO launching entire Arctic defence initiatives because of this nonsense. And in the middle of it all, a MAGA congressman getting absolutely schooled by Greenland's own minister. The audacity, the complete disregard for sovereignty. It's chef's kiss levels of political theatre. If you love watching me unravel disasters like this, please click that subscribe button. And while you're at it, if you'd like to get a shout out in my next video, then like the video, share it with a friend, and tell me your name and where you're watching from.
Let's introduce you to Greenland Minister Naya Nathaniel Elsom, Minister of Industry and Natural Resources, and Donald Trump backing Republican Congressman Andy Ogles. He's introduced a Make Greenland Great Again bill to Congress. Welcome both of you. Thank you very much for talking to our audience. Minister, your Prime Minister has told Greenlanders today, we must be ready for all possibilities. It's not likely that there will be military conflict, but it can't be ruled out. How are you and fellow Greenlanders feeling tonight?
Well, we are bewildered and have been so since New Year's Eve, I would say. This is an entirely new situation where an ally is threatening to annex or even occupy us.
Are people preparing for some kind of military invasion in practical terms?
Well, people are scared and people are preparing themselves in the ways they can.
Like what?
But of course, we're not aiming at a military invasion.
No, you're hoping that won't happen, of course. But are people stocking up on food, for example?
Well, I've been hearing that some of the stores have been running out of some materials and other, but I think right now we're just trying to make sense of the news of the world and figuring out what is it that the states want with us. We need some clarity in these coming days, and we need to deepen the dialogue that we have already started.
Congressman, you've just heard the minister. People there are scared and potentially preparing for your democratic country to take their democratic country by military force, a NATO ally, a sovereign country. That's outrageous, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I think the idea that the United States would take Greenland by force is absolutely absurd, and quite frankly, it's a talking point from globalists who are trying to sound an alarm. Let's be honest, the GDP of Greenland is roughly 3.3 billion.
Sure, and if I may, when Donald Trump...
I'll finish. 3.3 billion is, and yet, China has invested $450 billion into the Arctic Sea in just a 5-year period from 2012 to 2017. So if you're in Greenland and you are alarmed, it should be the buildup of resources by China in the region. And you can look at other countries that they've come into, whether it's the Belt and Road Initiative, or if you look at, their Thailand, Taiwan, Hong Kong, etc. So look, at the end of the day, the United States of America protects the Western Hemisphere to include Greenland, and we are looking to have a productive dialogue. End of story.
Donald Trump has had multiple... Of course, sorry, Minister, do come back. Do talk to our congressman.
Yeah, I just want to say that in Greenland we do understand that we are a part of the American national security sphere. We get this. What I want to know is, by your standards, what is your plan and your proposal? Leave the people of Greenland. And we do not want to be Americans, and we have been quite clear about that. We do want collaboration and deeper partnership and relationship. But I just must ask you, what value do you put on our culture and our right to decide what happens with us in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a valid question. I think as we look, we're entering into a new era. When you look how, open the Arctic Sea is, the Greenland Sea there, the Arctic Ocean, Greenland Sea. And so you look at Russia has, 8 nuclear icebreakers deployed. China has 5. Denmark can't keep pace with that. And so as you have increasing resources by adversaries of the West, and that would include Greenland, you're going to need this relationship with the United States of America. So whether it's the Golden Dome, whether it's trade, and look, there's trillions of dollars in resources there in Greenland for the Greenlanders, for the people. Denmark has not done anything, quite frankly, to capitalize on that for your people, for your country. The United States can certainly do that, and it's a win-win for the Greenlanders.
Right, so let's get into it. Oh, this is already painful. You've got Minister Nathaniel Elson sitting there explaining that people are genuinely frightened. Stores running out of supplies. And Andy Ogles, and by the way, this is the same congressman who introduced a resolution to let Trump run for a 3rd term, despite the Constitution explicitly forbidding it. This man has the audacity to call their fears globalist talking points. Globalist talking points? People are stocking up on food. They're preparing for the possibility that a supposed ally might invade them. And then, this is where I lost it. He pivots to GDP. GDP. Well, your economy is only 3.3 billion, as if sovereignty is determined by your bank balance, as if nations only deserve self-determination once they hit a certain economic threshold. And the China deflection. Classic. Absolutely classic MAGA playbook. Don't worry about us threatening you, worry about China. Meanwhile, Trump has literally imposed tariffs on Denmark, appointed a special envoy to push this annexation, and NATO had to launch an entire Arctic defense initiative called Arctic Sentry, specifically because of this crisis. But here's what really got me. The minister asks him directly, what value do you place on our culture and our right to decide our future? And Ogles just talks about icebreakers, nuclear icebreakers, completely dodges the question about human dignity and democratic self-determination. Because to him, Greenland isn't a nation of people. It's a transaction waiting to happen.
And do you want to answer the minister's question, which is what value do you put on what the people of Greenland want?
Absolutely. I think if you had a referendum today to the folks of Greenland, they would overwhelmingly want independence from Denmark, and they would overwhelmingly want a closer relationship with the United States of America.
I need to rebuke that. There was a survey last year that showed overwhelming solidarity within the kingdom. Of course, we want more self-determination, but we want it within the realm of the kingdom of Denmark, and I think that should be respected. We have been working towards more autonomy for 300 years with Denmark, and I think we're making progress in many ways. But this is a decision for Greenland and Denmark, a conversation we need to have amongst us. And I think that should be respected. I think the people of Greenland has clearly stated they do not want to be Americans. They want collaboration. And your point about the need to ramp up monitoring and presence in the Arctic, we are in agreement with this. This is one of the reasons why NATO was formed. It was to pull together the forces of many countries and the capacities and competences. So I think that there's ample opportunities to find solutions within existing frameworks, without harming my culture or my country.
Well, in your own words, you've been wanting independence from Denmark for 300 years. How's that working out for you? It's not. And now we have a shift in global initiatives and powers in the region. You can't do anything to defend yourself. Denmark cannot do anything to defend you. It's up to the United States of America. End of story. And unless you're capable, which you are not, of doing that, again, let me go back to the data. 3.3 billion is your GDP. China has already invested over $500 billion into the region, and that number is only growing day by day, and we see these continued incursions. And look, if there's going to be an attack on the Western Hemisphere, it's going to be from that sphere, and the United States of America, quite frankly, is going to have to make, and I think this is going to be a mutually beneficial relationship, but it's going to have to become a protectorate of the United States. And quite frankly, I think the people of Alberta would agree with that sentiment, that they would prefer not to be a part of Canada and be a part of the United States, because we are winning day in and day out. And the idea of NATO being able to defend anyone, anywhere is nonsense without the United States of America. They can't defend their own cities from the current invasion that's taking place from West Africa. They certainly can't do it from Russia or China.
I wonder if I could ask you, Minister, is Denmark doing enough? Is NATO doing enough to protect Greenland?
Well, we've been asking for years that we are perfectly inviting NATO countries and Denmark to ramp up the monitoring of the Arctic. We see a lot of purpose in that, not only for military purposes, but also dual use. So for us, this would be very acceptable, and we think it makes a lot of sense. So I think we can figure something out together, and I still believe in the path of dialogue. What we don't appreciate is the idea of being sold and bought like a commodity. But we do want to engage in the discussions about more national security for the US, which we appreciate and understand.
And there it is. There it is, right there. How's that working out for you? Did you catch that? The smugness dripping off that question. The minister just explained 300 years of gradual diplomatic progress toward autonomy within the Kingdom of Denmark, a process that's actually working. And Ogles responds like a condescending landlord, telling a tenant they should be grateful for a leaky roof. Here's what kills me. Greenlanders held an actual survey, an actual democratic measurement of what their people want. And the results showed overwhelming solidarity with Denmark. Not with America, not with Trump's fever dream of Arctic expansion. Denmark. And Ogles just waves it away like inconvenient paperwork. This is the same pattern we saw when Denmark launched Operation Arctic Endurance in January. NATO formed Arctic Sentry specifically to address these tensions. The entire transatlantic alliance is mobilizing because of this administration's aggressive posturing. And Ogles sits there telling a sovereign minister that her country can't do anything to defend themselves. And then he drags Canada into it. Alberta. Claiming Albertans would rather be American. Brother, the topic is Greenland, and you're already shopping for more territory. The minister says it perfectly. We don't want to be sold and bought like a commodity. That's not a political talking point. That's a human being asserting dignity. And his response? End of story. As if 300 years of a nation's history and identity can be dismissed with a shrug and American exceptionalism. This isn't diplomacy. This is a shopping spree with threatening undertones.
But it sounds like you've been asking...
mineral resources to be harvested.
Ah, well, that's interesting, because you are the Minister for Natural Resources. How much do you think that is relevant to the US leader?
Well, I think there's more than one narrative at play, and I think there's more than one truth. And I think we all need to find our way in that complexity. I don't think there's a single answer to this question. I think it can have to do with national security, of course, with mineral access, and maybe also with expansionism.
Do you accept that, Congressman Ogles? It's to do with US expansionism?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you have to look at the state of play on the global map today, that it's not NATO that's investing in the Arctic Ocean or the Greenland Sea or in the territory that is Greenland, but it's China and Russia. And unfortunately, we cannot sit idly by and allow that to happen. So as far as Greenland goes, NATO is defunct. It has not had a role. The handful of troops that they're sending there, it's symbolic, and I totally understand why Macron or some of the other leaders were going to want to stand up at Davos and come across as strong in their own roles. I get that and understand that. But at the end of the day, when you look at global peace, the world looks to the United States of America. And what I'm telling you, what the president is telling you, is that Greenland is an integral part of our security and global security, and the time for talk is over. We have to move forward. The clock is ticking. We continue to see China. We continue to see Russia advancing and investing in the region when no one else is, and no one but the United States has the capability or the resources to push back and fight this fight.
And final word to you, Minister, in response to the Congressman, and also your message to Donald Trump, who will be addressing Davos tomorrow.
Well, one thing I find baffling is I hear this about the need to control Greenland and own Greenland in terms of making sure that the U.S. is safe and sound. I just don't know how my freedom plays into all of this and how the freedom of my people plays into all of this. I think if you talk about freedom and security, that should extend to us as well, us being an ally, Denmark being an ally.
Thank you, both of you. And thank you for your patience as well, and for giving us so much of your time.
Look, I need to sit with this for a second, because what we just witnessed, that was the whole thing laid bare, wasn't it? Ogles just said the quiet part loud. The time for talk is over. A sitting United States congressman looked at a minister from an allied nation and essentially told her that American interests override her people's freedom. And he did it while invoking global peace. The audacity of that framing alone deserves its own dissertation. Let me break down what he actually argued here, because I want everyone to catch this. He said NATO is defunct in Greenland, that the troops being sent are merely symbolic. Meanwhile, NATO literally launched Arctic Sentry last month specifically because of this crisis. Denmark initiated Operation Arctic Endurance in January as a direct response to Trump's annexation posturing. The alliance is actively mobilising, and he's sitting there pretending it doesn't exist. And here's what really gets under my skin about this whole performance. He keeps invoking China and Russia. China's investing, Russia's advancing. And yes, those are legitimate geopolitical concerns, but hold on a moment. Who's actually threatening to forcibly acquire Greenland right now? Who slapped tariffs on 8 European countries, including Denmark, as a coercion mechanism? Who appointed a special envoy specifically to facilitate the annexation? That would be the Trump administration. You don't get to position yourself as the defender against expansionism while actively pursuing expansionism. The minister's final response, though, that was masterful. She didn't shout, she didn't match his energy. She just asked a devastatingly simple question. Where does her freedom fit into all of this? Where does the freedom of her people factor into America's grand security calculations? And Ogles had no answer. None. Because there isn't one within his framework. His entire argument treats Greenland as a chess piece, a resource depot, a strategic asset. Never once as 56,000 human beings with their own history and aspirations and democratic institutions. This is the MAGA worldview distilled to its essence. Sovereignty for me, but not for thee. Freedom as a rhetorical weapon deployed selectively. Democratic self-determination celebrated when it suits American interests and bulldozed when it doesn't. And I keep coming back to this. Greenland formed a coalition government last March, specifically to resist these annexation attempts. Their political parties put aside their differences and unified around one principle. We will not be bought, we will not be sold. We will determine our own future. That is what democracy looks like under pressure. That is what defending freedom actually requires. Not chest-thumping about military capability and nuclear icebreakers, but actual democratic resistance to coercion from a larger power. The Trump administration has made this calculation. They believe economic pressure and diplomatic intimidation will eventually crack Greenland's resolve. Those tariffs, set to hit 25% by June, that's not trade policy. That's economic warfare against allies, to force a territorial acquisition that nobody asked for and nobody wants. And Ogles is the perfect messenger for this approach, isn't he? The same congressman who introduced a resolution to let Trump run for a third term despite constitutional limitations. The man apparently believes the rules only apply to other people and other nations. But here's what I want everyone watching to understand. This isn't just about Greenland. This is about what America becomes when this rhetoric goes unchallenged. If a sovereign allied nation can be publicly threatened with annexation, and the response is merely shrugged shoulders and national security concerns, then what exactly does the alliance mean? What does any treaty mean? What does any promise of American partnership actually guarantee? The minister said it. Denmark is an ally. Greenland is an ally. And allies don't threaten to absorb each other's territory because they've decided the strategic calculus demands it. So where does this leave us? Watching the international order get tested by people who view rules as suggestions and sovereignty as a commodity. Watching allies question whether American commitments mean anything beyond the current administration's whims. Watching decades of diplomatic architecture wobble because one party decided expansionism sounds better than partnership. Stay awake, stay informed, challenge this rhetoric when you encounter it, because what happens to Greenland sets the precedent for what happens everywhere. Now, if you thought Ogles was bad at handling pushback, you should see what happens when another Trump ally faces actual journalistic pressure. I watched Lewis Goodall absolutely dismantle someone the other day, and the way she completely fell apart under basic questioning, chef's kiss. That's the video I'd recommend watching next. Subscribe to the channel and let me know your name and where you're watching from, so I can give you a shout out in the next video. And if you'd like to support the work we do, please click the join button below to become a channel member.